What's up, guys? Thanks as always for supporting the show. It would mean a lot to me if you would take a second to scroll down and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any more of our videos. Also, make sure you follow us all over social media so you don't miss any of our content or show announcements. Couple of notes on the Warriors. So they got off to a really tough start against the Bulls. They spotted them a 20-6 lead, just a total funk on both ends. Looked kind of like just an extension of what happened to them in crunch time against the Kings. But then they went on a 115-70 run, plus 45 in that span to blow them off the floor. Quentin Post has a 20-point game. And this is where I want to dive into the concept of a pick and pop. I talk about picking and popping a lot because it is one of the most difficult actions in the league to guard. It's difficult even with guards, like when you set ghost screens and they slip out of them. Just anytime a shooter is like moving to a spot, it's difficult to guard, especially as part of a screening action. But the bottom line is that most teams don't want to switch actions that involve a center. The reason why is you don't want to have your center out on the perimeter guarding some guard for most teams, and you don't want to have your guard guarding a center for most teams, right? So like you try to keep yourself out of these precarious matchups, and so you run these traditional coverages, right? So like in a traditional ball screen, what is going to happen is the center for the opposing team is going to come set a screen, and then the defensive center is going to either come all the way up to the level or sit way back as close to the rim as possible or anywhere in between. Those are like that's the range of coverages there. You might see a guy blitz where he just comes way out to the level and they both attack the ball and they try to get him to get rid of it. You might see a hedge where he like lunges out to stop him from driving but then recovers. You might see like a high drop. This is one of the most common coverages you'll see in the league. This is where a big comes all the way up to the level just to contest any guy who comes off to shoot a pull-up jump shot, but he's still staying kind of lateral to the ball so that he can contain the ball as they might try to drive downhill. And then there's like a drop where you like sit way back and you let the guy come over the top of the screen and drive into you. But all of those coverages involve the center engaging with the ball handler, right? In a hedge, you stop the ball handler from driving. In a high drop, you contest any sort of pull-up shot or movement shot coming off the screen. In a lower drop, you're dealing with the ball handler and the roll man coming at you. They call it no roller behind coverage. Your job is to keep both of them in front of you as you make that defensive read from the center position. None of those account for a big not rolling. When the big rolls, all of those coverages have a plan for it. None of them account for what if the big just sets the screen and then just pops. Because you can imagine if you hedge, then that guy who pops is going to be wide open. If you drop high, meaning like the center comes up to the level to contest a pull-up jump shot, the big man's going to be wide open. If you drop low, the big man's going to be wide open. No matter what you do, if you pick and pop, it's going to be wide open. Your only ways to guard it are to either have your big man stay home, in which case, if the guy sets a good screen, the guard's just going to go right downhill and compromise your defense. Or you can rotate to the shooter from the weak side. If you rotate to the shooter from the weak side, you can have issues where you're in rotation now and you end up just giving up an open shot somewhere else on the floor. It is one of the hardest actions in the league to guard. That's why for most teams, like there are certain guys like, Victor Wembanyama, you're probably not going to run a drop coverage against or any sort of traditional coverage because Victor can really shoot the ball, right? That's why the Lakers, for instance, when they played them, went back to switching 1 through 5. They wanted to make sure they didn't give up easy pick and pop threes to Victor Wembanyama. Guys like Kristaps Porzingis, same sort of thing. There are a handful of guys in the league that have earned a reputation that if they set a screen, it's going to be a switch because you can't give up that pick and pop. But for the most part, like even guys like Miles Turner, for instance, guys that can shoot, teams will be like, we're just going to let him shoot it. And if he makes a few, then we'll react. But we can't be building our defense around stopping Miles Turner from shooting threes. Same thing goes for a guy like Quentin Post. With a guy like Quentin Post, teams are going to, especially in action with Steph Curry, they're going to leave him open on the pick and pop. How many times did you see a two-man game sequence with Steph and Quentin Post last night where Steph came off the screen, both defenders went with him, easy behind the back pass or kickback pass, Quentin Post just standing completely unguarded out by the three-point line. It is an incredibly valuable thing to have a center that can legitimately shoot. It is always open. It puts the defense in a real predicament. And I thought Quinn Post was setting good screens all night long. He was running side-to-side action where like he'd make himself available at the top of the key, catch, and then quickly turn into a dribble handoff going the other way. He even in garbage time ran an inverted ball screen and got all the way to the basket for a layup where he had a guard screen for him. So like really, really interesting development with what we've seen from Quentin Post in the last couple of games. And then Guy Santos, who's been playing a lot as of late, starts with the fact that he's got good size. He's just a big, strong dude. He moves well laterally, and he competes on the defensive end. Guys are shooting 5 for 14 from the field, against Guy Santos in ISOs so far this year, which is really good. He does a really good job in ball screens. Like he fights and sidles up over the top when he can stay attached, but he's also big enough to peel off. Like one of the biggest jobs for a guard in ball screens is if you do get rocked by a screen and they have to switch, you got to get around and get on the inside of the big and try to box him out. It's a difficult job, but when you're as big as Guy Santos, it's something that is possible for him. And then he's also just shot the ball really well. He's made 18 threes in 39 attempts this year. That's 1.38 points per shot. That's so good that he's making defenses pay for helping him. Steve Kerr talked after last night's game about how Guy Santos and Quentin Post have earned his trust, but that he's not sure there are enough minutes for them when Jonathan Kuminga and Draymond Green get back. That is literally the problem. You have a million really solid role players, but you are utterly devoid of top-end talent beyond Steph Curry. Even Brandon Podziemski last night came back and looked great. Plus 22 and 21 minutes, did a little bit of everything. Everyone looks at the Warriors' record and how bad they've been at times this year through the lens of them just being a bad team. I don't see it that way at all. I see it as a team with a gaping weakness. One specific gaping weakness. One that will make you look bad at times in the modern NBA, no matter who you are. If you don't have guys that can create shots in the modern NBA, you will have games where your offense sucks and you look terrible. Right now, your secondary shot creation is Andrew Wiggins, Buddy Hield, and Dennis Schroeder by committee. None of those guys are consistent offensive threats. They'll look good some nights. They'll look bad others. It's looked especially bad of late because Dennis Schroeder's been bad a lot of the time, and Buddy Hield's been bad a lot of the time as of late. But none of those guys are even close to good enough to being a legit number two. They're being put into roles where they're needed to be consistently good offensively when that's not the thing. When you guys heard me talk about Dennis Schroeder before the deal, I never said he's a consistently great offensive player. I just said he's a really good player that does a lot of things that help the team, and he's freakishly competitive and compete and like in battles, and a guy that you'd like to have in a foxhole with you. That doesn't mean he's the second best shot creator on a championship team. I said at the time of the deal, I said I only liked the move in the context of another trade for a wing or a forward that can really score. The trade made all the sense in the world. You traded an injured player with a torn ACL for a player that could come help you right away. It was an upgrade no matter how you look at it. Dennis just hasn't played well. Here's the thing. Dennis hasn't played well. That's a fact. But Dennis will play better in the long run. Right now, you're in one of the lulls. But this is kind of the deal with Dennis. Dennis, you don't want to be in a position where you need him to score every single night. He's the kind of player that, like, this is what it was like for me when I was rooting for him with the Lakers. On the nights where he was on offensively, you just won. Where he'd get you 20, 25, on those nights were great, but you never counted on those. Those were just, when they happened, you're like, shit, we're getting a good Dennis offense game. Like, this is going to be really great. But then there's the other side of it, which is even when he's not having one of those offensive nights, he guards the ball really well. He's just overall a good competitor. He can do some advantage creation for a bench unit and make occasional plays to help your team win. It's been ugly because you're expecting this every night, but you've been getting that instead. And so it's one of those things where like slotting could go a long way to putting Dennis in a position where you don't need him to be great every night. I bet you guys think Dennis is shooting really poorly this year. And he is on contested shots. He's actually shooting 39% on unguarded catch and shoot jump shots since he joined the Warriors. But he only got 28 looks so far. He's doing the role player stuff fine. He's just struggling at the star stuff because you have him miscast right now as a secondary star. If you get a legitimate number 2 for Steph, it will slot everyone more properly, and then that will allow you to take advantage of the actual strength of this Warriors roster, a strength that puts them even above many of the other rosters in the league, which is a depth of role player talent. When you have role players all playing above their pay grade in terms of their responsibilities, they will look like they're inadequate players. When you have them playing in their pay grade, they will fulfill those expectations and look great. But you've got to get a guy up there next to Steph that can be a guy that you know is going to be good offensively every night. Because that will then slot everybody into more achievable roles.